welcome back to Susan Dawn at Spiritual Connections. Welcome to a brand new Sacred Union Energy Update slash Sacred Channeling. I'm not quite sure what this is going to be yet. We will be having a Sacred Union Energy Update. I just don't know if we're going to have it in this video. It depends on how far we get, because there's a lot of messages and insight and energy that I want to share with you guys prior to doing an actual reading, because there's a lot that's coming in. There's a lot that's happening right now, and it is all for our Sacred Union Path of Ascension. So we have the eclipse coming up this weekend on September 21st, 22nd, depending on where you are in the world. And this eclipse season has been big. In order to understand how big this eclipse season is, we have to go back to last eclipse season. And I'll link in the description box our channelings around that. This was all about releasing the old templates. And you might have experienced at the start of this month, September, for this first eclipse, the first eclipse was in Pisces, you might have felt that release. And you might have felt some old energy coming up, and that was the old energy dating back 6 months ago to March, where you might have been revisiting old templates, you might have been experiencing old triggers, you might have been experiencing even certain situations that felt like they were coming through on a loop. And that was because this was the release. And it might have felt like you were in a little bit of a pressure cooker. At the same time, you were reacting differently. You were experiencing it differently. Lots of throat chakra activations, as well as you can hear in my own throat. A lot about self-expression coming through. A lot about who you are, your sense of identity, your sense of how you see yourself and how you see the world. Maybe even how you see your journey, how you see your counterpart was clearing. And so it's all about coming back to the love. And that's why this is so important for these sacred partners, for this sacred union. This is sacred union energy here. This eclipse is also big. This eclipse season that we've been in September has also been big as a whole when it comes to the collective ascension, because this collective ascension, everybody's being impacted by it. When we do our readings, I always say, take the readings for your inner masculine and inner feminine, that's your inner union, for your counterpart connection, for your divine masculine or your divine feminine, so you can hold the space for each other, so you can have compassion and understand what each other are going through, and for the global collective ascension as a whole, because we're experiencing this as a whole. And what you're seeing in your own individual journey, you can also see on that macro scale as well. You can also see playing out with regards to the energies of the men versus women, masculine versus feminine. And as we talked about in the last Sacred Union Energy Update, there is no competition. It is not about competition. We are closing that division. We are closing that separation where we had been divided, where we had been separated. Now we're bringing it into union. We are healing the polarities. We are clearing the energy of that separation and bringing more into that harmonious union. And that is why it is so important right here, right now, the work that we're doing, the inner work that you're doing within yourself, and how that has a ripple effect on the collective. So I was awake last night. I couldn't sleep. I just kept getting tons and tons of downloads. And so I do want to go over some of the messages that I received, especially for those of you who are coming into physical union, physical communication, or for those of you who might be experiencing this within your energy field, the inner union, and then maybe experiencing that with a twin flame, sacred partner, or divine counterpart. The labels don't matter, but the connections are going to differentiate between or differ between how you experience your path, how you experience your journey. But it is going to be love, and that's the most important thing. Let me start with where we might have been over the past couple of weeks, especially with that eclipse on September, I think it was September 6th, 7th, or September 7th, 8th. It was that Pisces energy. And Piscean energy had us go very deep. And it was all about that intimacy with oneself, radical honesty with oneself. And again, you can check out some of our previous readings and Sacred Union energy updates for more on how the eclipse might have been impacting you. Remember, these readings are meant to be timeless. These channelings are meant to be timeless. So even though we are dating them, it depends on how you're going through your own journey, that you might still be experiencing this energy, or those messages might still relate to you. So it felt a little bit like we were in a pressure cooker. It felt a little bit like we were like it felt like we were being squeezed. And what I'm hearing is that this was actually not just an individual release, but this was a release that we were experiencing on the planet, an energetic release that was happening on the planet. And I'm getting this sensation of like a rumbling, of like an earthquake. And that's what was happening, is like the earth, the planet, from its energy grid was actually releasing a lot of that old energy, the old template, so that the new can continue to come through. And that's what has to happen. So imagine it's like distilling the water. So imagine if you have a glass of water that is muddied and murky, right? Well, you have to release it in order for new light codes to come through, in order for new paradigms to come through. You have to, it's pouring in the water, and the old stuff comes up to the surface and releases. I always give the analogy of a house because that's the easiest one for me to picture and visualize. You're getting new furniture, but you have to clear out the old furniture first, right? Otherwise it's just going to be cluttered. Well, that's what's happening, is there's a lot of old energy that's being released, old ways of thinking, old levels of consciousness, lower vibrations. It is old beliefs that are releasing. And this is happening on a grand scale. This is happening collectively as well. Remember, for those that I channel for, you have been activated to your ascension journey through a sacred partner, through a catalyst situation or event. That's what I call the sacred union path of ascension. It is your union where you're aware of healing the polarities within, and coming into inner union so that it has a ripple effect on the collective, on your life. But everybody's experiencing an awakening or ascension on the collective scale in some way, because this is a collective awakening that we're experiencing. It's just we all go up the mountain differently. It's the same mountain, but we might have different paths up it. And that's where we respect and honor each other. Everybody's going at their own pace. Everybody's writing their own blueprint. And I always, always, always say that this is a personal experience. It is a personal path. It's a personal homecoming to yourself that then affects the collective. So the sacred union path of ascension that we're on, we are doing it in a way in that we are really bridging the polarities, clearing the separation, and coming more and more into that unity consciousness. But you might be experiencing it. There might be a lot of pressure that you're experiencing, especially over the past couple of weeks. Now, there might have been a lot of triggers. There might have been a lot of old situations kind of repeating. Again, you might have felt like you were regressing, or that there was some old energy that was coming through, but the way that you handled it is different. The way that you perceived it is different. Um, the way that you reacted or responded was different, and that's because you're different. That's because of the level of consciousness that you're in. Now, this could apply to how you're experiencing your sacred union as well. This is especially important for those who are coming into physical communication or physical reunion and partnership with a counterpart, whether it's a twin flame, a sacred partner, soulmate, divine counterpart, whatever label you like to use. There are differences in the connection and how the connection presents itself and how you experience the connection, but it's all just love. It is all love, and it's all love that is perfectly attuned to you, and that's really important to remember as well. um so you might have experienced a lot of WTFs. What the hell is happening? You might have experienced a lot of, again, like just certain triggers, certain things that were kind of going upside down, and things that felt inside out, and where did this come from, that kind of thing. I certainly, it felt like things were breaking down. It felt like things were going wrong. It felt like, every time I turned around, it's like, okay, let me just catch my breath, because it was like one thing after another. Like when it rained, it poured, right? It was like crises after crises after crises, and not just with myself, but with people that I care about. And so with every situation and every circumstance, I realized that I was responding differently. I realized I was reacting differently. I realized that I was being in a place of observership versus sinking into old victimhood, or sinking into old um, energy of I can't handle this. And that's because your nervous system regulates, your energy shifts, your consciousness shifts so that you're able to see the bigger picture of what is happening, why it's happening, and thus you're able to approach it from a different landscape. And that is the healing of your ascension journey and the soul growth that you've come through, the other side of what we call the ascension journey. You're still on the ascension journey, but you're on the other side of all that heaviness. Paradoxically, it might still seem like you're experiencing some of that heaviness, and that's what's releasing. It's releasing all this old energy, but at the same time you might be feeling at peace. And that's why it's such a paradox. This journey is, in and of itself, a paradox. It's not logical, it is intuitive. And so that's where we have to apply a new paradigm of living, a new paradigm of being to this very journey, because it is, in and of itself, a paradox. And so I was up last night just channeling. I just could not sleep. There was just so much that was coming in. And so I want to read what I wrote because that's the easiest way for me to express it rather than just repeating it. And then we're going to talk about it and channel some more on this and channel more on the eclipse and some signs and synchronicities we're experiencing and how this might be affecting you and especially your sacred union path of ascension. So I said this journey is full of paradoxes because it's rewriting how you live and how you be, as we just said. It's not logical, it's intuitive, it's something that's felt with the heart, and that is where your heart and your intuition guides you. That's where your soul now has a blueprint. Your soul is now leading the way versus the ego. The ego was the thing of the past. We still have an ego because that's how we kind of identify in this world, this physical world, this human form. But the ego is not driving the chariot anymore. The ego is not in charge of the show. It's now your soul that's in charge of the soul, and you can feel the difference here. And so anytime that you're experiencing that ego, you can pull back and look at it from a place of observership and connect back to the heart. Bring your consciousness, your awareness back to the heart, back to your intuition, back to your inner self. So your awareness, I always say, is your superpower. And so anytime you have that spiral, anytime you have that ego that's flaring, keep bringing that awareness back within you. I experienced that this week. I had a major ego flare and ego tantrum this weekend. It was just, it was the strangest thing because I was just feeling so much anger, so much injustice, so much grief. And I kept saying, this doesn't feel like me because underneath the surface there was so much peace. So I'm like, this, where is this coming from? It could have been collective, maybe it was my counterpart, it could have been other people that were influencing the energy field, but I kept saying this doesn't feel like me, what's going on? And so I was guided just to sit with it, just to hold it, just to let myself feel. And so I would journal and write it out, everything that I was feeling. I have a habit of just like writing like all these curse words and saying like, what the fuck is going on, God? And God holds. God is able to hold that space. God is always there. You're always connected to God, even in moments when you don't feel connected to God. You're always connected to that higher source power. And that's the power that's within you, truly. And so I was journaling and then I was crying, and it literally was a spiral. But I was also able to hold that peace within and just hold space for myself and give myself whatever it was that I need. And I was aware that, okay, this is an ego flare. It's an ego tantrum. It's not going to last forever. I know what's on the other side of this. On the other side of this is an ego shift. And that's what happens when or a consciousness shift. That's what happens when you're about to experience a consciousness shift. Your ego will flare because you're about to experience a change. You're about to experience something different. Now, what happens when you are experiencing a consciousness shift and there's ego flares is your ego is your survival center. It is your defense mechanism. It wants to keep you safe as it has done across lifetimes and for centuries. And so it has protected you, especially within this incarnation, and it has been what has kind of written your belief system. And so anytime you have an experience, your ego will say, okay, let's write a belief around this. Let's write an assumption about this. This is safe, this isn't safe. And so again, it's that protective mode, it's that survival mode. and it does its job. It's very good at what it does. And again, in our physical world, in our physical life, we do need the ego. It's not necessarily about killing the ego. That's kind of like a faulty saying that we have in the spiritual community. It's about rewiring the ego or realigning the ego. It's really about re-identifying the ego. So it's not necessarily about killing the ego, it's about making sure that the soul always speaks louder, making sure that you're always connected to the soul versus leading from the ego. The ego doesn't lead anymore, the soul is what leads. And so when you're experiencing consciousness shift, your ego will flare because you're about to change. You're about to change how you see things. You're about to change yourself. You're about to change how you perceive things. You're about to change your belief system. It's literally your consciousness is shifting. And so your ego will flare, and that's literally what we're experiencing in the world as a whole right now in the collective, where they call it an extinction burst, where all of a sudden it will feel like all this chaos is coming up to the surface, all this old energy is coming up to the surface, but it's for the release. It's like a bubble that's bursting. What they're bringing me to as an example is like the dot-com bubbles or like the housing bubbles, right? You had these massive inflations, and then the bubble burst and everything had to shift. Well, it's the same thing with like an ego flare. You're having this massive spiral or this massive temper tantrum. Your inner child is freaking out because this doesn't feel safe. Your nervous system is freaking out because something new is coming in, and it's just a consciousness shift. And what the shift is more peace. It's seeing things differently. Again, it's just literally a shift in consciousness. And you've been through this before. You've been through this with dark nights. You've been through this with um, just how you identify with yourself and how you identify with the journey. You've been through this with releasing attachment. You've been through this before, these consciousness shifts, and this is going to be another. And so for myself, I was just allowing myself to hold that space and become the observer of it. And then as the night kind of went on, I felt this peace kind of coming through. Then I went to the beach with my best friend over on Sunday, and it was like divinely timed because that's when I really began to anchor into that consciousness shift, anchor in and integrate the energy that I was already shifting into over the course of the night. And it was an expansion, and that's what it felt like. It was an expansion. And so again, that's that bubble burst. It's like your way of being bursts open so that you expand into something and someone new. But rather that it might express itself in different ways in your physical world, but it's really just the way that you see things, the way that you're operating. It's like you're getting an upgrade, but first, before you get the upgrade, it's like the um the system kind of goes haywire because it's trying to hold on to the old operating system. It's saying, let's put a patch on this, let's put a band-aid on this, let's try doing this, let's try doing that. Like your ego is grasping for everything, and finally your system is like, nope, we're getting an upgrade. This is a full-on upgrade. We're not doing iOS 4.0 or 4.0 anymore. We're doing 5.0. But 4.0 is going to be like, let's try this, let's try that. We don't want to go. We want to hold on. And so this is part of the release. So when I was at the beach, I wrote a blog post about this. It just felt like this expansion. It just felt like this connection to everything. And then over the course of the next couple of days, I just felt this loving energy come through and this peaceful energy come through where any resentment that I was feeling or still holding on to, even if I was unconscious of it, was released. And like we had talked about in the last Sacred Union Energy update, there was just this grace, there was forgiveness, there was release, there was just love that was coming through. And it doesn't necessarily have to be with regards to your partner. This could be with whatever it is that you're experiencing in your physical world. This could be other relationships or dynamics. This could be especially for yourself. And that's what happened to me is I realized where I had been blaming myself, where I had been punishing myself, where I had been internalizing everything that I have experienced in my life, and especially in the connection, and basically spiritually abusing myself. And that's something that had been worked on over these many, many years, but I realized where there was still that coding that was happening. And so what I was doing is I was releasing that self-punishment, And that came through with regards to my counterpart as well. I realized that as one soul, you're one soul with your twin flame. As one soul, if I'm punishing myself, then we're just punishing each other. The mirror goes back and forth, right? So what I experienced was just this release of that spiritual abuse. Now, always take responsibility for yourself, always take accountability for yourself. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about blame. I'm talking about holding on to punishment. I'm talking about where you are internalizing and ruminating on it, and that creates a perpetuating belief about yourself where you believe that you deserve the experiences that you've had, where you believe that you deserve the shitty things that happen to you. That spiritual abuse, you gaslight yourself, you convince yourself that you're deserving of it. Again, there's a very distinct difference between holding yourself accountable and having responsibility for your part that you play in situations and experiences, etc. That's where we have to have that spiritual maturity and that discernment to say, okay, I've been responsible for this. I'm holding myself accountable for this. But it's not about continuing to punish yourself. That's where forgiveness comes in. That's where grace comes in. And I'm also hearing the word salvation, interestingly enough, for those who might resonate with that word. Um, so I realized where, I was being silent with my counterpart, that I was just kind of punishing myself, that I didn't want to be silent. There might have been certain situations that I didn't like, that I didn't want to engage in, but at the end of the day, what came through was just love, that love for this person and forgiveness for this person. And so I realized that if I'm holding back in any way, if I'm holding back love, then I'm literally just holding back love from myself and within myself. I'm literally just punishing myself. And I no longer want to be in a paradigm where I am punishing myself or anybody else if there are other situations. Now, again, I'm using that word, but we have to understand the context of that. Punishment doesn't have to happen in a way of you're consciously doing it. Punishment can mean like where you're holding yourself back from love, where you're closing yourself off from love, where you're guarding yourself, where you're not letting yourself open up to that deeper intimacy, to that deeper connection. That's punishment too, because we are meant to be expanded individuals. We are meant to be expanded in that level of consciousness, in that level of love. Like we are meant to be loving. Like we are not meant to be holding back from love. And that's where I said, no matter what, this is who I want to be. I want to be that open heart. I want to be that love. And I don't want to hold myself back, because then I'm just shutting myself off and dimming my own light. And so it felt this sense of freedom. Um, Within myself, it felt like this sense of liberation where I decided for myself who I want to be, not dictated by the circumstances, not dictated by my physical reality. I'm going to keep tuning into my heart, keep tuning into my soul, and where I'm being guided. And if there's something in the physical that is not preferred, or is that unhealthy, or is that something that I don't want, I don't have to give it my energy or my intention. I don't have to focus on it. I can accept it. Okay, that happened. That sucks. But I don't have to keep creating stories around it. I can change the story myself. And that's where you become the creator, the creative empower, or the empowered creator. You're the creative in your own life. You're literally constantly creating your own life. So, what came through was just love. And it was just this pure love, this pure essence of love. And so that's the new level that I'm operating from, is just continuing to expand in that love. And not everybody is going to like it. I'm going to read you guys a poem because they just showed it to me from my new book, Searching for Icarus, that completely describes exactly what it is that I'm feeling. Okay, bear with me because this is exactly what I'm talking about. There's too much inside me. Too much for this skin I'm in, for these open arms and idle hands that want to scatter love across barren lands and seed it in the broken places. I offer the forever of long-stemmed flowers in my words, and the delight of ice cream sprinkled with a smile, and the whimsy of a paper boat that floats for miles without the risk of flood. There's so much inside me, so much for this mind inclined to paint the world in rainbow tiles and dangle treble clefs from telephone wires and tuck handwritten notes into hidden spaces. But all I hear is rejection's refrain. The world isn't ready for you yet. still I love anyway. And that's what they were showing me. Why I wanted to read that is because the world might not be ready for it yet, but I'm gonna love anyway. I'm gonna be who I am anyway. And it was just kind of this um, mindset shift, and it was just kind of this moment like, okay, I'm just gonna be more and more fully me. And I'm gonna talk about this more in a minute. So let me get back to this. If you're at this stage, well, no, let's talk about that first. Okay. Um, Not everybody will be ready for you yet, but that does not mean that you're meant to dim your light. That does not mean that you're meant to hold yourself back or close yourself down. Your vibration is rising. Your frequency is shifting. Your consciousness is changing. And when we speak of this, when we speak especially in terms of raising vibration, that people have lower vibrations and people have higher vibrations, it is not again to create division. It is not to create a separation. It's to understand that vibration and energy is a spectrum. It's simply a spectrum. So it's not about higher or lower. It's not about a hierarchy. It is simply where we are on a spectrum. And so it's very similar to a radio, where when we are tuning to different stations, some stations are clear and coming through clear. And so we're tuned in and we're resonating, and some are maybe full of static and we're not understanding what's being said. We can't quite hear what's being said. The important thing, and everybody is a radio station or is tuned into a radio station, right? Everybody is a frequency that we can tune into. Um, or the world, the universe is a frequency that we can tune into. The most important thing is that you don't change your song just because, people are adjusting the radio station and maybe they can't hear you, maybe they're static, based on their frequency. So maybe they're not tuned in. That's okay. Don't change your song. It's becoming clear for those who need it. It's becoming clear for those who can hear it. Don't change your song. That's your job. Your job is to keep singing your song. Your job is to keep tuned to the frequency and that higher level of consciousness and that higher energy that you're at, because that's holding the space and holding the light for others, or holding the frequency for others so that they can tune in when they're ready. Your job is to sing your song, and those who are tuned into that frequency and vibrating at that level will hear you and will resonate. That's what holding the light truly is all about. And so it's just a spectrum. It's not a division. It's not a separation. It's not a hierarchy. It's literally just a spectrum, and some will tune in very clearly, and some might not be ready to hear it. There might even be, dials where you're not even heard at all. That's okay. Keep singing your song. Keep singing your song. Keep expanding. Keep shining your light. Okay. That brings me to this. For those especially who are at this stage of energetic or physical reunion, you might be feeling this energetically. You might be feeling this and experiencing this physically with meetups and communication, conversations, however it resonates for you. Some of you might actually even be in relationship and expanding in that relationship. It will seem simultaneously hard and peaceful. Again, we talked a little bit about the pressure cooker, and this is where that comes in again. It's peaceful and loving because this is how you've been shifting in consciousness. Remember when I said that it felt like I was having this ego flare, but I was still feeling that level of peace within? That's your new level. You might have an ego flare, but your new level of consciousness is ultimately that peace. Your new baseline is that peace. Your new baseline is that love. And so you're alchemizing the friction, you are transmuting the triggers, and that's exactly what I kept doing over the past couple of weeks, and especially on Saturday when I was having that ego flare. I just kept alchemizing, I just kept transmuting, I just kept allowing myself to feel, but not attached to the story of it, not spiral into the story of it. And that's when things began to clear, because I became the observer and I said, okay, I know what this is, I'm aware of this, I'm going to allow myself to feel whatever emotion is releasing, because emotion is just energy. Emotion is energy that needs to be released, but we don't hold on to it. So you're alchemizing, you're transmuting, And it's hard because, I'm going to just read this. It's hard because you're raising your frequency, and so what's old might fall away. So it can feel a little bit like a pressure cooker because your light is so strong. And it might make you feel uncomfortable, especially as you're experiencing this shift, especially as you're kind of balancing out the ego versus the consciousness shift, and your ego is flaring and like about to burst in this bubble, and your soul is like, just be with it, just be with it, you're fine, you're just experiencing a consciousness shift. So it might feel a little bit uncomfortable, and you might actually feel pulled to regress a little bit or dim your light in order to make other people uncomfortable or other people comfortable. So as you are expanding, you are going to be shifting in your energy field, your frequency, and also even in your physical reality. And so you might have people around you who are not understanding the level at which you're at, or the beliefs that you're holding, the mindset that you have, that level of consciousness. And so you might want to feel that ego pull to dim your light even more to make other people comfortable. Again, it's not about making other people comfortable. It is about holding space for them and where they're at, loving them and where they're at, but it's about making sure that you are still honoring yourself and honoring what you're experiencing. You've been experiencing your evolution and soul growth. You're meant to be shining your light because your light dispels the shadows, and the shadow is what can feel uncomfortable. Okay, so again, you might be experiencing this especially when it comes to sacred partners. When sacred partners come together in reunion, in physical union, or energetic union, you might be experiencing this both. You might be experiencing an influx of energy and an influx of light that actually makes other people uncomfortable. Is because there is so much love. You are the template of unconditional love. That is what your sacred union path of ascension, your sacred union journey has shown you, has brought you through, to bring you to that level of unconditional love that you have within you, that you have always been. Now, everybody else is unconditional love too, right? Everybody as a soul is unconditional love, but it's a level of consciousness. They might not realize it yet. And so that's where you are kind of forerunners on this journey because you're aware of it. That's your consciousness, your level of consciousness. Your level of consciousness is your level of soul awareness. Where other people might be acting in the unconscious state, which you hold space for, you hold compassion for because you were there too once upon a time, right? So you don't know what you don't know. So you hold compassion for those who might still be operating in the unconscious. But now that you are at a higher level of consciousness, now that you are at a higher level of recognition and awareness, you are holding the space and holding the light for others in that unconditional love. You know what true unconditional love actually is. You know what true heart expansion is. You know and understand what true unity consciousness is. And so that's a new paradigm from which you're operating. And that can be really uncomfortable for those who are still operating in the unconscious and in the shadow. But you're meant to continue to hold that light and be the light. You're meant to keep tuned to the radio station that resonates for you and that sings your song, and anybody can tune in too. So, the other thing that I want to say is, with these reunions and reconciliations happening both in dream state or energetically and in the physical, you might be experiencing both. Prior to, connection or communication, you might have a lot of healing dreams. That is astral travel. That is telepathy that's happening. So there might be a lot of healing that happens energetically or in dream state that is activating a next level for your reunion. And how you continue in that conscious connection within your reunion. We've talked about that in previous Sacred Union energy updates, and I do have a new workshop called Return to Union that talks about this, talks about how to release the separation energy for good, and how to move into that conscious connection and reunion with your counterpart, including a couple of different exercises to empower you into this next version of you and into this next level of your union. I've also put together a bunch of bundles and activations with workshops, channelings, healings for your journey. So you can check all of that out in our Ascension Connections portal to really help you move into this next phase of your journey. This is what this eclipse is. This eclipse energy truly is about planting the new seeds of our expansion. And so this is where it is very union and sacred union coded, because again, the previous eclipse, especially last season, we were doing a lot of releasing over this past 6 months. And this previous eclipse in Pisces was having us go really radically inwards, really radical honesty with ourselves, really being deeply intimate with ourselves. What cannot stay? What old mindsets, old identities, old beliefs cannot stay if we want to continue to evolve, if we want to continue to expand in that love, in union? If we want true union, and I'm not just speaking romantic relationship, because union is not just romantic relationship. True union is the harmonization of the polarities. It's the balancing of the polarities. It's the unity consciousness as a whole. And so if we want that, we have to release anything that is not that. And so that's where there might have been a lot coming up to the surface, where you were truly seeing yourself, number one, as you are now versus where you might have been. So, again, acting differently, reacting differently, responding differently, because that is a hallmark of your expansion and your evolution. If you're responding differently from that higher level of consciousness, changing the patterns, changing the behaviors into ones that are healthier, more spiritually or emotionally mature, right? So, as you're expanding, you are identifying differently with yourself and with the circumstances around you, the experiences that you're having. So that was, that eclipse in Pisces. It was really having us go deep within, it almost felt like a hermit energy, very deep within, to be very intimate with ourselves, very honest with ourselves as we are releasing some of that old energy, some of that old, what I call soul sludge. But this upcoming eclipse is all about planting those new seeds, sowing those new seeds. And eclipses come in 6 month cycles. So what are you going to be sowing and planting for the next 6 months? This we said, do not. It was not a time for manifestation. The last eclipse, just a couple weeks ago, that was the release. This is the time to plant those seeds. This is the time to decide who you want to be, what you want to experience in your life as the empowered creator. Remember, you are creating your life with the universe. You get to determine how you want to live. You get to determine, how you want to experience things. You get to determine your life. You get to determine, your experiences. So you're planting those seeds of your desires. You're planting those seeds of, what do I want to do? Who do I want to be? And especially becomes a question of, who do I want to be? Because as you are is what you experience in the world. I don't know if that was clear. As you are shifting in your being, becoming more and more you, more and more your soul, more and more expressing who you are at the soul level, that's what you begin to experience in your world. You become that magic. Or I should say, your life becomes magical because you recognize yourself as that magic. And so this is what this eclipse is going to bring in. It's going to be sowing those seeds and really, really planting in those roots of this next version of you, especially over the next 6 months. So everything is shifting and changing right now. And it might feel a bit uncomfortable because it is a shift, because it is a change. But it is going to be part of the expansion and part of the consciousness shift that, number one, you're experiencing in your own individual life, and that we're going to be seeding for the collective. The expansion that we experience within ourselves has a ripple effect on the collective. The more of us who are doing the healing and experiencing that peace, that oneness, that unity consciousness, and that unconditional love, the more it is having that ripple effect and can impact the collective. It is why we do our Sacred Circle community live streams. It is because we are coming together as a collective to hold that space, hold that light, hold that prayer. It's just like when we're doing global meditations, just like when we're doing global prayers. It is a powerful thing. The more of us who have that intention, the more of us who are holding that higher light, higher consciousness, the more of us who are clearing all that soul sludge within ourselves, not only does it have an impact for future generations, but it heals family lines as well. It has a ripple effect throughout our whole energy fields, throughout all timelines, across all space and time. That is why the work that we're doing is so important. And the time that we're in, these amplified energy dates, these eclipses, are just helping to amplify this energy. It is helping us to expand and helping us to evolve both within ourselves and as a whole. Okay, so we're going to leave this here, and I'm going to go ahead and record the Sacred Union Energy update, and that will go up tomorrow to get further into how specifically is the Divine Masculine, the Divine Feminine, and the Union energies being affected by this and continuing in their evolution. We'll be back tomorrow. Bye.